Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today is January 24th. We are here for our Larimer County Administrative Matters meeting. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shag-McNally, Chair of the Board, and I would love for all of us to stand and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's a wonderful, beautiful day in Larimer County. I wanted to also acknowledge my colleagues here at the dais with me. To my left is Commissioner Kristen Stevens, who resides in District 2, and to my right is Commissioner John Kafalis, who resides in District 1 and is also Chair Pro Tem. Also with us today at the other side of the room, we have our clerk to the board from the Clerk and Recorder's Office, Deidre O'Neill. And then we have our County Manager, Lorenda Volker, Tom Clayton from our Public Information Office, and Sarah Martin from the Commissioner's Office. So with that, we will move on to public comment. We have no one signed up. Sarah, is there anyone online or anyone else? Thank you. Is anyone in the room, would they like to be speaking in public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment and move on through the rest of our agenda. Now we move on to approval of the minutes. Commissioner Stevens, would you please read the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes for the week of January 17th, 2023.
Colleagues, do you have, I saw you had your hand raised, Commissioner Foss, do you have a?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I pointed out over the weekend that there seemed to be a discrepancy in the minutes. If you look at least the ones that are in the hard copy that's in our packet, under legal matters, there's a double entry. Okay, it looks like it's been fixed online, so that matter has been addressed.
Okay, so you have no changes or?
I have no changes.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thanks, thank you. Thanks, Deidre.
Okay. So we'll move on to our upcoming review of our schedule. So we'll turn this over to Sarah Martin from the Commissioner's Office. Good morning, Sarah.
Morning. This is the Commissioner's schedule for January 30th to February 4th. On Monday, January 30th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., there will be a work session regarding subdivision road maintenance in the Commissioner's conference room on the second floor. From 12 to 1:30, there will be an elected officials lunch at the Stakeout Saloon at 152 West Mountain Avenue in Fort Collins. From 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., there will be a work session with community planning, infrastructure, and resources in the Commissioner's conference room on the second floor. On Tuesday, January 31st, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be an admin matters meeting in the hearing room on the first floor. From 1:30 to 3, there will be administrative direction to county management in the Commissioner's conference room on the second floor. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., Commissioners will attend the City of Fort Collins State of the City address at the Lincoln Center at 417 West Magnolia Street in Fort Collins. On Wednesday, February 1st, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., Commissioner Shaddock-McNally may participate in the virtual Colorado Forest Health Council meeting. From 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m., there will be a work session regarding the 2019 to 2023 strategic plan in the Commissioner's conference room on the second floor. From 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., Commissioner Kafalis may attend the Associated Students of Colorado State University Senate meeting at the Senate chambers at the Laurie Student Center at 1101 Center Avenue Mall in Fort Collins. From 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., Commissioner Stevens may participate in the virtual North I-25 Coalition meeting. On Thursday, February 2nd, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., Commissioner Kafalis will host a community conversation for the Wellington and Waverly communities at Avuncular Bob's T-Bar Inn at 3803 West Cleveland Avenue in Wellington. From 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., Commissioner Stevens may participate in the virtual statewide Transportation Advisory Council meeting. From 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., Commissioners may attend the United Way of Larimer County Women Give Luncheon at Embassy Suites Loveland at 4705 Clydesdale Parkway in Loveland. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., Commissioner Stevens may attend the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Council meeting at the Weld County Administration Building at 1150 Zero Street in Greeley. On Friday, February 3rd, from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., Commissioner Kavalis will attend the State Board of Human Services meeting. It's a hybrid meeting in person. It'll be at 1575 Sherman Street in Denver or virtually via Zoom. From 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., Commissioner Stevens may attend the Regional Air Quality Council Board meeting. It's a hybrid meeting. In person, it'll be at 1445 Market Street in Denver or virtually via Zoom. On Saturday, February 4th, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., Commissioner Shattuck McNally will host a Loveland Commissioner and Community Conversation. Location, guest, and topic will be announced prior to the meeting. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you reading the upcoming schedule. Commissioner Stevens, do you have any additions or changes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I do. On January 30th, the Monday, I'm going to be attending the CCAT Standing Policy Committee meeting instead of the elected officials lunch. I also am not on the stack anymore, so I won't, and I'm sorry that that's still on my calendar. I'll need to remove that from my calendar, but I will not be attending that on Thursday, February 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kafal, any additions or changes, sir? Okay, thank you very much. So we will move on, and we have some, sorry, moving on to my agenda. There we go. I will move on to the consent agenda. A consent agenda consists of items of no preserved controversy, routine administrative actions such as abatements, agreements, deeds, final plats, liquor licenses, resolutions, and other matters previously reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners. Staff recommends approval of the consent agenda, and a commissioner may request that an item be pulled off the agenda and considered separately. So I will read through quickly for the consent agenda for Tuesday, January 24th. We have one abatement, which is an abatement for refund of taxes. We have two agreements. One is CrowdStrike Terms and Conditions, which is a kind of a software agreement for our enterprise software, and I think this is a lot to do with cybersecurity as well. We also have a amendment number 4 to fiber use lease agreement, and that is between Platte River Power Authority and Larimer County. And then we have appointments. We have a recommended appointment to the Grasslands Public Improvement District. We then have deeds. We have 4 deeds, all specialty warranty deeds through engineering, which conveys right-of-ways on behalf of the Colorado Department of Transportation and Larimer County, and those are all on the website. And then we have 3 liquor licenses, actually 4, excuse me. One is a liquor license renewal, Worthwhile DBA Inlet Bay Marina, a liquor license renewal for Odell Golf LLC, DBA Mountain Vista Greens, liquor license renewal Swing Station LLC, DBA Swing Station. And 4 is a liquor license renewal for Reese Hospitality Incorporated, DBA Best Western plus Loveland Inn. We have a miscellaneous item, which is monitoring and permit deviation report, and that is through the Solid Waste Department. And then we have 6 resolutions. One is the resolution for conveyance by the Board of County Commissioners for right-of-way, a resolution of a convenience by the Board of County Commissioners, another right-of-way. 3 is the same thing, a resolution of convenience by the Board of conveyance of all those for the Board of County Commissioners for right-of-way with the CDOT, and then resolution of conveyance by the Board of County Commissioners, again, engineering with the CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation. Then we have a findings and resolutions denying the Larimer short-term rental administrative special review, and again, another miscellaneous a resolution of findings and resolutions denying the Roth appeal. So those are all on our consent agenda. For the members of the public, if you want more details about the consent agenda, those are always posted on our Board of County Commissioners website. and the details of those items are on those agenda and more detailed on the website, and that's on larimer.org. So, colleagues, would anyone like to request an item repulled from the agenda? Okay, with that, Commissioner Kafalis, please can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda for January 24, 2022.
Thank you, sir. There is a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. So we'll move on to our commissioner guests. We have two guests. I see one has arrived. I think one is still coming. I don't see them. So we'll go ahead and have your guests first, Commissioner, which is our Public Health Director, Tom Gonzalez. I'll let you kind of introduce our Health Director, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Tom. I'll let you introduce yourself and why you're here. Nice to see you.
Well, good morning, Commissioners, and Tom Gonzalez, Public Health Director. Thank you for having me as a guest to raise awareness on an important public health topic, and that's indoor radon. Last week, the Larimer County Board of Health proclaimed January National Radon Action Month in Larimer County in order to raise awareness about radon and to encourage residents to get their homes tested with a simple test kit. I have an example right here of the free test kit that we are distributing. So in support of Radon Action Month, the Health Department is offering residents free postage paid home radon test kits that can be picked up at our Health Department locations in Fort Collins, Loveland, and starting this Friday, January 27th, you will be able to pick those up at the Town Hall in Estes Park with a partnership with the town. Well, what is radon and why is there so much fuss about radon? Well, radon is natural. It's odorless, it's colorless, and it's a radioactive gas. Due to our geology and other factors in Colorado, we are considered a high radon potential region by the EPA. So let's put it in comparison. The average indoor radon levels in the United States is 1.3 picocuries per liter. In Colorado, it's 6.4, almost 6 times more than the average of the United States. Now let's put that to what's that mean for health. So living in a home with an average level radon, 6.4, for a year is equivalent to having almost 200 chest x-rays at one time. So the amount of exposure of radon, the radioactive, is pretty significant. Now, radon can get into our homes pretty easily through cracks in the foundations, openings around sump pumps, drains, crawl spaces, etc., specifically in basements. And any home may have high levels of radon, even if a neighboring home doesn't. So you may say, well, my neighbor doesn't, that radon was below the action level of 4 picocuries per liter. I shouldn't have to test. That's not true. We see it to be dependent on conditions of the home and conditions of the soil in that area. So one home could be under 4 and another one could be over 4. So that's why we recommend everybody get their home tested. Now, Elevate, I talked about how comparison to the amount of radioactivity or compared to x-rays, we know that radon, long-term exposure to indoor radon, is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. It contributes to nearly 500 or estimated 500 lung cancer deaths in Colorado each year. Only smoking causes more lung cancer deaths than radon. So if a homeowner finds high levels of radon after testing, the problem usually can be easily and efficiently mitigated for the cost of a typical home repair. Testing is easy and remediation of elevated levels is typically inexpensive, so we're encouraging everyone here in Larimer County to get their home tested.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tom. Appreciate you being here. I wonder, and this is really important, and I'm glad there was a good discussion at the Board of Health meeting on Thursday night. Can you tell us, does the Larimer County Public Health website is there a link or is there information on there in addition to the sites you just mentioned where people can get their free radon kits? Is there information on the website?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for that question. Yes, we now do have a webpage just dedicated to indoor radon, what the testing recommendations are, and where you can pick up the test kits as well. And we sent out a media release to our media outlets yesterday as well to give them the information.
And that location, please, is larimer.gov/.
Health. Yeah, larimer.gov/health. You'll look right on the page. You'll see environmental health, air quality, specifically indoor air quality and radon. I think even Corey's got it on our banner on the top page, so it's easy access to get to.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Commissioner Stevens, do you have comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have a question. So when you say that it's easily mitigated and typically inexpensive, being a homeowner and knowing the cost of repairs, they can be pretty high, and this is maybe not on people's radar. How expensive are you talking about? I mean, because for some families that's it might be unaffordable. So are there other ways that are there funds that they can use to help if they do find that in their home?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Commissioner Stevens. And yeah, being a homeowner and having my water line break last year, the cost of these repairs is getting more expensive all the time. Typically, when we see high levels of radon, it depends. Upwards sometimes of $1,400 where you've got to put the more active systems in with the fans and the pipes. There can be simple mitigation. We're sealing cracks, putting up vapor traps, those kind of things. So those can be a lot less considered on cost. So it all depends. As far as those that need some support or assistance, I would have to look back, but there used to be a process where you could get a 0% loan. I don't know if those are still available. That's something we could certainly look into.
Yeah, I think looking into like even LHIP and some of those groups,
Sure.
To see if they're willing to help with that, because if it's if it creates a problem for indoor air quality, but people don't have a means to fix that, that becomes a problem. So yeah, if we
Yeah,
could
I
just
agree.
look into other, help people who, as they get the kits, and we're giving out the kits, and I would encourage people to do that, obviously, but then. If you find that out and you can't afford $1,400, then you just know that you're sitting in a house that's not safe. And so, how do
Well,
we
and I
help?
appreciate that, too, very seriously. And typically we see the higher level in lower parts of the home, specifically a basement. So even in that situation, let's say you have a higher level in the basement and it's not as high or what's below the action level on your main floor or upstairs if you have one. It's rearranging your house temporarily while you're looking for those funds so you're not sleeping or more breathing that air in that typical more situation. Because the longer you're exposed to that, of course, the risk goes up. So there are certain recommendations we have in situations like that where maybe it's cost or it's access to get somebody to come in and help you put the remediation program in. So stuff like that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I just looked online really quick while you were talking. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has a low-income radon mitigation assistance program that people can apply for to be able to make their homes safe.
Thank you, County Manager Volker. I didn't know if that was still available, but I'm glad to hear it is.
Is that
so
something
great.
we could maybe link to on,
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Just a quick follow-up to Commissioner Stevens. I appreciate very much your question and the discussion and the reference to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. You used an acronym, and I think you were referring to the Larimer Home Improvement Program, and that might be something we should check into to see whether or not radon mitigation is available through theirs. The Larimer Home Improvement Program is something that the county contributes to. It's administered by the Loveland Housing Authority, and if you go to the Loveland Housing Authority website, you can look up about the Larimer Home Improvement Program, and they do offer low-interest loans and grants to help folks with a variety of things, accessibility to their homes, and certainly improvements to make them more safer to live in, and radon may be covered under that, but I suspect our county manager is probably checking on that one too. And maybe with the CDPHE, the Department of Public Health and Environment, if you haven't already thought of this, we could maybe put a link or something on our website that says, if you need help with this, this is where you can go. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this up. It's something I've had to deal with my home. We have active, continuous mitigation thing. I know that costs a pretty penny, so I'm glad that we have some opportunity to help folks find resources for that. And so folks that do have that, how often should they be monitoring their basement with they know they have it, and let's say someone finds it and then they do mitigation measures, how often should they be retesting or mitigating that?
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner. The recommendation typically by a professional that is certified to install these systems is 3 to 5 years, making sure the maintenance and the fans, everything working. But typically every 3 to 5 years to make sure there hasn't been a change in the environment of the home, whether it's been settling or more cracks. Even if your home tests below 4 picocuries per liter, it's recommended to test every 3 to 5 years just to make sure there hasn't been a change in that environment.
Great, thank you. I'll have to look back at the last time we tested, so, but I do know that there have been changes. And so I was curious, with it being in Colorado, is there more areas, like you said, one home has it versus maybe the next home doesn't? Is there anything that research has shown? Is it because they live near water or near some of these expansive soils, in certain areas of Colorado, especially in our Larimer County? I know the southern part of the county, there's certain areas around Loveland that have notoriously expansive soils and challenges with that. I'm curious about if there's any research showing if there's connection to that.
Yeah, thank you for that question as well. Typically where we see elevated radon levels is more along the foothills to right there on up. So you'll typically see more west, Larimer, up into Estes Park, Red Feathers, where we're seeing more of the decomposed granite, the fractured rock where the radon being decomposed comes through those fractures. That's usually more elevated than where you have more soil or sediment, rather than the rock composition. That doesn't mean you wouldn't find elevated radon on eastern Larimer, but it's typically higher in western Larimer towards the foothills.
Great, I appreciate that information. Just helpful for the public too, so maybe some folks who live in those areas might want to really make sure they're testing. So.
Absolutely. One thing Corey, our communications director, has added to our website is an interactive map, and you can see where the results are of typical radon, and you'll see that it's typically much higher on the western portion of Larimer County.
Well, thank you for the information and public safety information too for health. And I think sometimes it's a great place to live, but we should also need to know about all the potential health risks that we should be monitoring for ourselves as well. So, well, I appreciate you coming today, colleagues, and I appreciate the information and the great job you and your staff do to kind of a lot of information you guys are monitoring for all kinds of things for air quality and water quality and all the restaurant inspections, all the things that your department does. And this is just one more item. So appreciate all the work that you and your team do and keeping our Larimer County residents safe and healthy. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have something else, Commissioner?
Just I appreciate the timing because I'll actually be doing my Red Feather Lakes community conversation virtually and then the Planning Advisory Committee. So I'll print out the press release that we received.
Thank you.
And share that information with folks. It sounds like based on topography, geology, et cetera, the issue can be more acute in west of the foothills and going up into the mountains. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. And so our agenda was my guest from the Executive Director on Meals on Wheels. He was, I just got a message, he's not able to come today, so he's going to have to come next week. The reason I invited Meals on Wheels to come is because this week they're celebrating their 55th anniversary. And it's their theme is Cruising at 55 and Feeling Great since 1968. And so they have an open house this week, Thursday, January 26th, from 3:30 to 7:30, and that is at the the downtown Loveland location, and I believe that is on Garfield Avenue. Meals on Wheels is a very important nonprofit and agency that does more than just delivers meals. They provide a lot of social contact and community building in Larimer and Berthoud area. They are probably the oldest, if not some of the biggest in west of the Mississippi. I think they're one of the first ones west of the Mississippi. So it's really a lot of historical significance there, and they presented at the Office on Aging Advisory Council. I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and I wanted them to share about the intersection and challenges they have of rising food costs as well as increasing needs from the community as more and more folks are looking to receive that kind of help at home. So we'll go ahead and move them on to next week. And but if you're interested, that open house is again Thursday, January 26th, this week, 3:30 to 7:30 at their downtown Loveland location. And congratulations and happy birthday to Meals on Wheels of Loveland and Berthoud. So thank you. Okay, so we will move on for our discussion items. Today we have one discussion item, which is a discussion of memorandum of understanding with Republic Services for negotiating to design, build, construct, fund, and operate the North Landfill Central Transfer Station and Materials Recovery Facility, which is also kind of what we call our recycling center. So I will have Lori Cadridge, our Assistant County Manager, and also our current CPERS Director, our Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Director, and I think also she will have probably Dwayne Penny, our Solid Waste Director, come. So welcome, Lori. This is a really big item and something you have been working on for many years, so thank you.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Lori Cadridge, and I'm the Assistant County Manager. And Dwayne Penny and I are delighted to bring this proposal before you this morning. We introduced the topic last week and then took the information to our Solid Waste Policy Council. And so I just want to give a brief summary of where we have been and where we're at today, and then invite Dwayne up to discuss more the specifics of the proposal. And so I came on board with the county about 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And one of the things that we were working on at the Solid Waste Department at that time was the implementation of the Solid Waste Master Plan. And in the Master Plan, there were what is called Tier 1 projects. And so the community and the region knew that the landfill was nearing what they call end of life, or it's getting full for its permitted use. And so a new landfill would need to be constructed if the county was going to stay in that type of business. And so I worked with the director at that time about implementing that Tier 1 level projects. And what we learned is that the master plan had been done in 2018 and estimated about $50 million was needed to begin these projects. And through the design and the further exploration of those Tier 1 projects, the first project was estimated to cost $65 million. And so at the time I stopped that project and said we need to reevaluate what we're going to be able to do, because obviously if you have $50 million in reserves and it's one project is $65 million, we weren't going to be able to cash flow the project. The other challenge we had is that we don't have any control over who brings materials to the landfill. And I know this sounds kind of odd, but you need a certain amount of materials coming in order to pay for the operations. And in our county, there's what we call a competing landfill over in Alt, and there are other landfills in our area. So people who haul materials to a landfill have options for where they dispose of the materials. So if we increase our cost, then they can go to a different landfill. And so we were faced with some of these decisions on how to make the operations at the Solid Waste Department cash flow and work to the benefit of Larimer County residents. When that master plan was first done, there was a lot of outreach in the community about whether or not the landfill should be privatized. And the stakeholders who participated in that process said no. They did not want the landfill to be privatized, thinking that then the county would not have any control over rates or there wouldn't be competition in the area. And therefore, it would hurt the people who were currently using the landfill. And so Dwayne is going to explain more why we think we've reached a better compromise on how this proposal before you today is a public-private partnership in which the county does not give up its authority to assist county residents in maintaining good rates for the community and competition in the area. And yet we are suggesting to the commissioners that we work with a national company because there are many reasons for us to work with people who do this all the time. There aren't any other departments in the county that provide similar services to what we do in solid waste division. And it's difficult to get supplies, equipment, employees that work in these areas. And so by partnering with a national company that does this all over the country, there are more resources in what I've called bench strength if somebody is not available in the area or have that expertise. Fortunately for the county, we were able to secure Dwayne Penny, who has a great deal of experience in these areas, including starting landfills, closing landfills, looking at diversion facilities, running diversion facilities, exploring emerging technologies for diversion. And so with that, I'm going to invite Dwayne up and to cover the details of the proposed memorandum of understanding. And then if the board would like, I can as well summarize the Solid Waste Policy Council comments about it. So please, Dwayne.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dwayne Penny, and I'm the Director of Solid Waste for Larimer County. And I appreciate the time to provide a summary of the MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding. And the purpose of the MOU was so that we could begin working with Republic Services to establish terms that are important to make sure we agree on and before we start moving forward on a contract. And so if I could summarize the MOU, and if you have any questions, please let me know. When we broke it down into three groups. We have the North Landfill, the Central Transfer Station, and the Recycling Center, which I think is, we'll call it the Recycling Center. It is a MRF, Materials Recovery Facility, like the Commissioner stated, but just to keep it so everyone's on the same page. So the landfill, and before I actually get into the MOU, I'd like to elaborate just a little bit further on what Lori was talking about. So a couple years ago, when I came to Larimer County, I was tasked with getting the program moving forward and getting these programs implemented and get them into operation so that we could continue with our solid waste program. And as I started to put the pieces together, initially you have to take a look at the cost, the capital cost for a transfer station, which is an expense. And really, when a landfill looks at a transfer station, it's simply an expense. And why it's an expense is because people bring trash there. We load it into transfer trailers and haul it to the landfill. And so, but it's necessary to have a transfer station because it was placed into the sequencing of the projects for two reasons. Number one, to stop a lot of traffic from traveling they would use the transfer station and instead of direct hauling to the landfill would mitigate a lot of traffic. And secondly, the shareholders at that time were in favor of building a transfer station so that the smaller route trucks would have a place to go so they could dump instead of traveling 30 miles to the landfill. And also a lot of our other contractors that do services throughout Larimer County, they would have a place to go to instead of having to travel for an hour to a landfill. So the transfer station's an important piece. Secondly, the North Landfill. The North Landfill is just south of Rawhide Power Plant, and that landfill is going to be a long-term landfill for Larimer County. It does have challenges. It has some challenging winds, and those are going to be something that we have to mitigate, which we will as we work through our agreement with Republic Services. And then the last thing is our recycling center. The one that we have right now has been very good for Larimer County for a long time. However, with the growing recycling, it's now becoming to the point where we either need to modify that building and expand it, or if we have an opportunity working with our partners at Republic, we could actually build a materials recovery facility recycling center. And that would be a good thing for Larimer County because we would be processing materials and shipping them directly to the market rather than sending them to Denver. And so I think that's a high-level summary. And as I looked at the cost of those facilities, and if we just focus on the transfer and the landfill, we're talking about easily, just to get the transfer established, $15 to $18 million. And the landfill, to get the first phase infrastructure, all of the road improvements leading to the landfill, it's easy $30 million with all of that combined. And right now our fund balance is sitting at $50 million. And so we would deplete our fund balance, and we would still have a recycling center that needs to be rebuilt. And so as we begin to take a look at our circumstance and situation, we began to put together a request for proposal. And we sent the proposals out. We sent two, one for the transfer, one for the landfill, and then one for the diversion facilities, which include the materials recovery facility, compost facility, with food waste, and also a construction and demolition processing facility. Attached to that RFP, we also included emerging technologies. That's something we're very interested in, is finding alternatives to landfill disposal. And so that's something else that we're working on. But it's important that we get these core facilities figured out and moving forward so that we don't end up with a lapse in services in Larimer County. So through the private-public partnership, we put out the RFP, and in it we've requested to our vendors that are qualified that they would design, build, construct, fund, and operate the transfer station and the landfill. And they would also do the same to the MRF, but the county is going to invest in 50% of the capital. And so we'll be an active partner in that too. And just another side note, we will continue to provide oversight of the landfill and transfer even with the partnership. And so I think that's important to hear. So getting into the MOU, unless it might be a good time, does anyone have any questions before I get into the MOU?
I don't see any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So the MOU, we started out with the landfill, and initially we started out with the life of site is the term. And in this case, Unit 1, which is we're calling our first phase is a life of site, it's 100 years. And the reason that you get into a long-term relationship with the partner is because of liability. And they can also track the volume. They understand exactly what they put in the landfill. And so from an environmental standpoint, if we ever have any problems, we know what we've got. And so that's important. But also, we're looking for a long-term partner that can help us build the solid waste program in Larimer County and improve it through the years. So we'd have somebody that we can work with long-term. The second part of the MOU is a royalty to Larimer County. As we started to work with Republic Services, one of the things that I would like to quickly mention is in the SWIMP, the Solid Waste Infrastructure Master Plan, there's a lot of references to the biggest risk that the county has in these facilities is not having secured volume. And Lori mentioned that earlier as a problem, and it's a challenge. And so that's another reason why we felt like if we were to go out with an RFP, we could get national waste companies that work in this for a living, have access to hauling themselves, and can help us build the solid waste program that we're trying to build in Larimer County, which is ultimately to succeed in diversion. And so Lori mentioned something I think worth noting. I think it's confusing to some people why they say, why do you want a lot of volume in the landfill when we're trying to get rid of it through diversion? And I think the best way to explain that is these initial facilities are very high capital intense. And so as we work with our partner, they are going to have a return on investment. And the only way they get that is through charging fees, just like we do now at our landfill, to landfill users. And so they stretch that out over, maybe 10 or 15 years. That's something that we'll discuss, and maybe even longer. And the cells, as they're constructed, they have to build new ones. So it's a continuous capital flow. And I think that's important for people to understand. Now, the diversion comes in. It's also a part of that. And we try to find viable diversion programs that we do not have to subsidize, but are viable, meaning if we build a program where we separate the waste materials, we have an end use for it so that it's not coming back to the landfill. And so I hope that clarifies some for those are a few of the questions that I've gotten from some of the residents. So I thought it would be a good one to share. And so a royalty to the county. So the county would receive, we started out with the 15% average. And the reason that number was chosen is because the volume is going to be dependent on what that number is. So it's a 15% average. So if the volumes are lower, the county will receive 10%. If they're higher, then the county would receive up to 20%. And so there's benefits both ways to help our partner get established and also take some of the risk in helping them get the program rolling. That would be on an annual basis. And so that will be negotiated into the contract, and that will be for the life of site that we will receive that royalty payment. That royalty payment would be used to continue to fund remediation at the landfill, which is continuing today for groundwater and surface water. And also, we will assist in some of the operations like the MRF or the recycling center and things like that. So we'll have staff members in the solid waste. The initial rates for the facilities, we will negotiate the rates and to keep it competitive. And one of the questions I had is from a resident said, well, the waste companies, they'll just jack the rates up and we'll all be paying more. And I want to take a second to explain that. It doesn't work like that. The waste companies are in the business of handling waste, and they know that if they increase the price too much, then they push themselves out of the market and nobody would use their facilities. And we've experienced that at our landfill. We've had some price increases over the last few years trying to get more competitive with the other markets. And as people call, we explain why we're doing it. And we've had discussions with Republic about they're very concerned about not getting it too high, but high enough that we can pay for our operations and our costs. And so we'll be working with them on that. Rate increases will be negotiated with the county on an annual basis. In Larimer County, all rates will be negotiated. Outside of the county, which we do expect a few special waste projects and different things like that, that may come into the landfill. We will give Republic the latitude to be able to set that pricing because it's outside of the county, but it cannot be any lower than what we're charging Larimer County residents. Construction, everything inside the landfill will be up to Republic Services in the landfill. And outside, it will be the county solid waste department to work with the county for the road improvements. And I think there are a lot of road improvements for County Road 70 and County Road 9 that our engineering group is working with, and those are going to start to move this spring. And so we'll help fund all those road improvements. The equipment, we have some really good equipment at the county. It's maintained through our fleet program, and Republic Service is interested in procuring our equipment if we end up negotiating the contract and moving forward. The environmental compliance permits, Republic will be responsible for all the permits moving forward. I think it's important to note that the county has taken the program considerably down the road with, we were able to successfully get the engineer design and operations plan approved for the landfill and also the CD. And so there's still some work to do with planning to move it forward. However, we put that on pause in the event the commissioners approve us moving forward with Republic Service. They can jointly work with us so that we can do it together and then hand off a smooth transition into what the requirements are for the county. Closure and post-closure, that will be all Republic Services. They'll be responsible to close the cells, and that's an extensive process. When we close the cell, when we're done with it, all that information, all the construction, it all goes to the Colorado Department of Public Health, and they evaluate it and approve it, and it's a part of the permit for life. So it's heavily regulated, and there is a cost associated to it, and so they'll be putting funds aside for that for long term. The employees, as I mentioned at our last meeting, our employees are an important asset to us, and we've talked to Republic Services about a transition, and they are very excited about working with our employees and trying to bring them into their company. And so that's something they're very excited about. And so some really good things. Republic has some excellent benefits, and they are going to offer tenure. And I think that's important to our folks. Household hazardous waste. We talked to Republic about this and how important our program is. The one thing about our program, our HHW, it's often called household hazardous waste, HHW for an acronym. It's important to know that we subsidize that program, and we think it's important to continue. And so we would like to figure out a way to work with Republic and also reach out to our partners. And if we can build a new recycling facility, the building that is now our recycling center would be an excellent place to consider more of a regional facility for HHW. We also would like to continue electronics recycling. And I mentioned last year when I spoke to the commissioners that we have a lot of mattresses coming in. And we're reaching out now, working with vendors to recycle mattresses. And so that could be handled through that facility very efficiently. And so, and with the household hazardous waste, it would be the same type of program we have now, but we have to figure out the logistics and the economics, but they certainly want to be a part of that program to ensure keeping those materials out of the landfill. That's it on the landfill. I'm sorry I'm talking a lot, but I'm hoping this is working for the commissioners.
And colleagues, do you have any questions at this point or comments?
I do not. We've had robust discussions about this, and I think it's important that you're providing the level of detail that you're providing, Dwayne, for the public to hear and to better understand. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just wanted to kind of pause. And maybe this isn't the right point to talk about it, but when you talked about rates, we're still kind of overseeing those rates and working with Republic for setting those rates. And I know we had a hearing last year regarding setting those rates for the coming season, when I know, or year, setting those rates. And I remember you mentioning that we were still quite competitive or lower than other landfills. Is that correct?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner, and that is correct. Larimer County has always, over the years, tried to maintain a lower rate for its residents and businesses. And, you know, with the ever-changing economy and runaway cost to do business, we found ourselves in the last few years catching up. And it's important to catch up for a number of reasons. We want to keep our market competitive with the other markets. We don't want to be over them because then everyone in Larimer County, or we don't want to be way under them because then we'll get, it's just not a competitive market. So we're trying to stay up with them, but we are considerably lower than them.
Great. And I just want to clarify, I think, and maybe I misunderstood, Lori, how many other landfills are actually in Larimer County? Most of these are in other counties, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So Alt is in Weld County and Erie is in Weld County. And those are the two landfills that Lori's referring to.
And just even from Loveland, considering driving to the transfer station from the Loveland Recycling Center to the transfer station, which is kind of in west central Loveland, that's 9 miles, but it's almost 35 miles out to the Alt landfill, I think, or approximately. I don't want to quote on those, but it's almost triple the distance. So you got to think about gas and greenhouse gas emissions and driving that far. So really, if we're using that transfer station for before going up to landfill, it is kind of cost effective to drop off at the transfer station. And so when those other transfer changes from that transfer station up to landfill, that will kind of combine those drop-offs from other people dropping off waste and put it into one kind of transportation to go up. So it would actually reduce the amount of miles traveled overall for many folks. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct, Commissioner. So I'll elaborate a little bit more because you brought up a really good point. Loveland currently is one of our haulers that brings materials to the landfill and the recycling facility. And, in our discussions with Loveland, it was important for them that we had that transfer station. And for those reasons that you just mentioned, they have a collection route and they pick up the community, and for them to haul 30 miles to our new landfill, a direct haul, then they would have to buy more equipment. And so they were very much in favor of having a transfer station. And I think it's also a good time to point out that there's always a higher cost at a transfer station than a landfill. And the reason for that is when you look at a transfer station, you have the cost of disposal that's going to be added in, which is your landfill cost, and then you have the handling. And the handling consists of loading the materials into that transfer truck that you're speaking about, Commissioner, and then hauling it to the landfill. So you have transportation, labor costs on top of if you just direct haul to a landfill. And that was all figured and determined during the SWIMP development that would be a good approach for Larimer County. And so we're sticking with that because it was also two of the Tier 1 projects that were important to our municipalities.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that. I think it's a good point that, by bringing it all to one and then combining, we're kind of reducing the miles traveled and the kind of truck traffic, back and forth, north-south or east-west from our county. And the Erie landfill, I understand, is even further is about the same and those are privately owned, correct? Both of those landfills are privately owned and run by private companies?
That is correct.
Okay.
And Alt is actually about 22 miles from our landfill. I'm changing the point of origin. And then Erie is about 40 miles. And so when we build our transfer station, it will be at the landfill, which is another good point. So thank you. It will be constructed at the landfill where haulers currently have their routes figured out and transport their waste materials to.
I just use that point of reference to Loveland Recycling Center because I know a lot of residents are really big on the recycling program, and a lot of them, use the recycling program and go there and drop things off. I think they just had a big art mural project there, so I thought, from my point of reference, just kind of tried to use the same spot for those thinking about that. So I appreciate you clarifying some of that, and to clarify that these other landfills are privately owned and the distance traveled. So it sounds like this transfer station, for the long term, it's just really being good stewards of our environment, but also maybe of a lot of other taxpayer resources, and considering the importance of how we kind of move things through our county. So am I making that okay connections there with that statement?
Yes, that is certainly it. Trying to minimize the amount of traffic on our roads within the county is important and was looked at in this process as well. And so the transfer trailer, those are really large trailers, and you can put a lot of waste in. So if they go to the transfer station, we can pile a lot of vehicle waste into one trailer and send one vehicle to the landfill. And that's important, of course, to our carbon footprint and what we're trying to do to increase our sustainability, which is going to be a big part of our diversion program moving forward once we get these core facilities figured out.
Great. I probably have more questions, but I know we probably have a little bit more to cover. Colleagues, do you have anything else you'd like to add or questions for that? Okay, thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate you confirming my understandings. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Commissioner. So moving forward to the transfer station and the MRF. So we are discussing with Republic. They are evaluating maybe constructing one building and having the transfer station and the MRF together. And, we're in discussions with that right now. We haven't gotten a long ways down the road because obviously sequentially we needed to get your approval first before we get too far. But it was brought up as a possible solution, and we really think that's a good idea. But in terms of our term, both the transfer and the MRF are going to be 20-year commitments, and Republic will design, construct, build, and operate those facilities and provide the equipment for the MRF, and they'll operate the transfer station. The initial rates, once again, the county will help establish the rates for the transfer station, and that will be based on a lot of factors that I mentioned earlier with the capital costs and, the operating costs and all those things. We'll be able to work through the process with them and establish rates. And then the material recovery facility, which is a different structure. Republic will operate the facility. Us being part owners, we will negotiate with them how they operate it on processing costs, and then we will set the rates for the people coming in to use the recycling center. And so we'll be heavily involved in establishing that. And then, of course, the market share on what goes to the markets with all the recyclables will share equally with Republic. And those are yet to be determined, but will be determined in the contract. Rate increases, we'll continue to negotiate with the county for any rate increases for these facilities. The construction, the transfer station is all, like I mentioned earlier, all Republic services. The recycling center is Republic services and the county. And site access and improvements is our responsibility. And so I can share that we've already been working with behavioral health on updating the Taft and Trilby intersection. That will be a lighted facility, and I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that because that's a lot of use at that intersection, and it's but it will have lights, so that will help. The equipment, Republic will be responsible to purchase the equipment and the design for the MRF, and they will operate it. And the county, like I said, will be heavily involved from a partnership standpoint on the MRF. The employees, Republic Service will staff both facilities, and the employees will be Republic Service employees. Now that we will have a staff that works on the pricing and stuff like that, but that's outside of the operations. And that is the highlights of the, from further or, previous conversations, we could talk about solid waste facilities for a long time, but I'm hoping that I've covered the highlights so that it provides you enough information for what we're asking today.
Thank you, Dwayne. That's a lot of information to cover in a short period of time for many years of talks and ideas and thinking and coming together, and the details are very important to kind of get right. And I think we all are daily using waste management things with our homes, and how this is something we all have in our lives, and whether we do one bag out a week, my trash day is tomorrow, or whether we have recycling or the things that we do every day, it's something that is really important. And to get it right and to kind of reach some of our partners' goals and our goals, I think it was still one comment I see in this is about the tangible sustainability and diversion goals towards, still having that diversion. And so I think that's great that we're still kind of focusing on some of those goals that's stated here on this, the last page. So I'm pleased to see that on there as well. I just want to thank you, all of you and your team, and Lori, for the amount of work and that you put into this, along with my colleagues that put a lot of time in on the Solid Waste Policy Council, and a lot of meeting time and a lot of conversations. And I want to thank my colleagues for their commitment and time and service on that Solid Waste Policy Council, because I know that council has a lot of robust discussions, and I appreciate their efforts there, and I want to thank them for that. And thank you, Lori, for also bringing Dwayne and his team on board. They're amazing, and we're very, very fortunate here at Larimer County to have this outstanding team and staff here. So I wanted to publicly state how grateful I am for your expertise and your skills. And since I drive by the landfill almost every day back and forth to my home, I see it, and I'm always amazed, just even since you all came on, just the difference that you have made, just the appearance and how it's run, and what a great job you do. So I wanted to tell you that I see it daily, so I want to thank you. So with that, colleagues, do you have any other questions or comments you'd like to make at this time? Commissioner Kofalis.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate your presentation. I'm wondering if, Lori, if you want to come back up for a minute or two to provide a little bit more detail about the discussion with the Solid Waste Policy Advisory Council and the outcome of that discussion as far as providing input that would help inform the discussions with Republic Services should we approve this morning.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. A couple of notes I made while Dwayne was speaking that I think is important to add to the context that he gave. One of the main ones is he touched on the idea of this life of site contract. And one of the most important things regarding the life of site contract is that Republic Services then will assume the liability for any kind of environmental damage or concern from how the landfill would be operated. As the commissioners know, currently the county is assuming the liability or the bulk of the liability for the existing landfill and any kind of environmental concerns that result from the operation of decades of use of a landfill. And so under this arrangement, the private sector will assume that liability. The other thing Commissioner Shattuck McNally touched on was our goal in seeking private partner for these core operations is so that the county can then focus on diversion strategies. We want to be in the diversion business, which is part of the reason that we offered to partner on the larger recycling center is so that we can focus our attention on behalf of the other agencies that we're partnered with in meeting our diversion goals. And one other thing that we didn't touch on at all is what we call our self-haul customers. And those are residents or small businesses that currently use the landfill. And we have a significant number of people that come to the landfill from our county and from this area that dispose of materials either from their business or from their home at the landfill. On a weekend, for example, we could have 1,000 or 1,200 customers a day on average that use the facility. And it's a key reason that we wanted to keep a transfer station at the existing facility because it's more centrally located within the county than if we moved everyone up to the northern part of the county. And so we're hoping that with this public-private partnership that we're still able to serve those interests in our county, and therefore our goal is that they wouldn't dispose of those materials somewhere else, and not thinking of another landfill, because other communities deal with people that actually just throw their materials somewhere in a remote area of the community, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Lori, can I stop you right there real quick? So what you're saying is, because I'm, my family and I are consumers, a small, person who drops off things when we decide to clean up the garage once a year, right? And we use the hazardous waste thing with cans of paint and things like that. So for everyday folks who are already, like those 1,000 people that you're mentioning coming on the weekend, will this look much different other than having a new transfer building to drive into and transfer? Will this be much different than what they're currently experiencing with the operations at the landfill?
No, it should be easier because of the design of the new facility and how they're able to get the materials out of their vehicle and onto what we call just a pad, and then we'll take care of the materials from there. The other thing that will be different, though, is as we implement our diversion programs, there'll be more opportunity for the people who are doing what we call self-haul to divert the materials that they're currently bringing to the landfill, because there are a significant amount of material that can be diverted that are being brought into the landfill every day. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is what Commissioner Kafalis asked about, which is the Solid Waste Policy Council, because last week we took this memorandum of understanding and kind of the framework to the Policy Council to seek their input. And without exception, the other communities, which include the town of Estes, the town of Wellington, the city of Loveland, and the city of Fort Collins, we're all concerned about seeking a private partner for the landfill and the transfer station. They had no concerns that we were looking at Republic Services in order to partner with. And so repeatedly they said, this isn't about the company that you're looking at. We're just not certain that this is the right choice for the county to engage with a private partner rather than continuing to operate as a public entity. And so some on the council did ask if the county would delay making this decision until a later time so that they could more fully evaluate that decision. And so that was kind of the bulk of it. The other thing that the council did say is that if the commissioners decide to move this forward, they would like the other agencies to be involved more in the negotiation of the contract. And the reason for that is because some of the communities are impacted by whatever is in the contract. And so by way of example, the town of Wellington was very supportive in having a contract with a private partner, because then they could guarantee where the transfer trucks would haul their materials. And one of the concerns that the town of Wellington has had is they don't want people going through the town to haul materials to the new landfill. And so by entering into a contract with a company, then they could ensure, if the county is willing to do this, and we are, that the route goes around the town rather than through the town. And so that was kind of the discussion that was had by the board. And I'd welcome any additional comments from the commissioners who were in attendance.
Commissioner Kafalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Lori. A question and a comment, and then before we make a decision on this memorandum of understanding, I assume we'll all have a minute or two to make some closing comments. But my first question, based on what you just shared, is regarding the various convenience centers, like the one in Wellington that exist. Will that be part of the conversations to determine what role those convenience centers will play?
Yes. As you might remember, the county is trying to get out of the business of convenience centers. And so I think it must be a couple years ago now that we closed the convenience center in the Berthoud area. And so as the private sector is able to provide more services into the rural areas, we've been closing those convenience centers. And by opening the new landfill, we hope that we'll be able to offer members of the Wellington community a better service than what we're able to do right now at the convenience center. But that'll be something that we need to work with the town of Wellington on.
Great. And my comment and the statement I will make sure I would like you to confirm the statement, and that is also one of the outcomes of the discussion on Thursday, I think it was the 12th, with the Solid Waste Policy Advisory Council, was an opportunity for the different stakeholders, the municipalities, their technical advisory folks, to provide input to the county. The county will take the lead on working with Republic to negotiate the contract, but we did agree to receive input that would help inform those discussions. Is that correct? And if you want to elaborate on that at all, I think that's important.
Yes, I think at least it was my understanding from the meeting that the technical advisory group, which consists of members from every one of our partner agencies, would assist us in developing the framework to have those negotiations with Republic Services. And by way of example, the one I mentioned for Wellington, they may say, we think you should have a section in the contract that deals with the hauling routes for the transfer trucks. And then we can take that information to the table as we negotiate with Republic Services on how the specific language of the contract is developed. And of course, a contract is negotiated. And so Republic Services may agree with that, or they may suggest something different than that. But at least we would have all of our partner agencies' interest in mind as we entered into the contract negotiation.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So we did have a fairly robust conversation, if robust is the right adjective to use in this case, at the last meeting. Apparently, I was misunderstood in that people believed that I had already made a decision about this. So I want to correct the record to say that I had not made a decision, but I feel like a decision needs to be made here. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to something we heard at that meeting, which was that maybe we should pump the brakes or slow this process down. And is that a good idea? Can you respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. I probably should have done that in my opening statement. As I mentioned earlier, when I arrived, which is nearly 4 years ago, we were ready to design and build the transfer station to get that project started because the existing landfill is nearing what's called end of life. And unbeknownst to us, we got the pandemic after that, and we haven't had a lot of hailstorms. And both of those things have changed what is happening with disposal rates for the existing landfill. Absent that, we would be nearing the end of the time that we can use our existing landfill, which would mean we'd have no operations there. And so we have felt like we are on a tight time frame to get the design and the construction and the permitting moving for the new landfill. So it would not be a recommendation from our team, unless they're going to contradict me, which I don't think they are, that we delay making this decision, because right now we're set to build, because we've been moving forward as if the county was going to build and operate the transfer station and the new landfill. So all the permits have been issued to us. If we enter into the private partnership, which we are recommending, then those permits have to be changed to Republic Services. And then, of course, they need to design and begin to go through the planning process to build the transfer station and the new landfill, which is already a substantial delay in what we would be doing.
Thank you. And I think just for the public, can you just reiterate some of the reasons why a public-private partnership might be in our best interest? Because there are a lot of people that, and this was expressed at the last meeting, that feel like we would be better as a county to be able to operate the landfill. So, I mean, Dwayne spoke to some of this, but if you could just speak a little bit to it, because I mean, some of it is financial, some of it is because of the expertise, but maybe just touch on that to recap.
I think I'll start with the guaranteed volume. So if we enter into a public-private partnership with Republic Services, they are going to use their own landfill. So all of the volume, which could go to a different landfill from their trash hauling services, will come to our landfill. And so right off the bat, the county will receive enough revenue that we can operate the new landfill and transfer station. And that is a core reason for us considering a private partnership. Absent that, we would need to look at some kind of what's called flow control, which would encompass the entire county, in order to guarantee that there's enough volume or revenue coming into a new landfill and transfer station to properly operate and recover the capital investment of those facilities. The second reason, from my perspective, that's most important is that by entering into the public-private partnership, the core services that are needed right away and the core capital investments are covered by the private sector. So the transfer station and the new landfill, the capital investment is covered by the private sector, which enables the county to use its reserve money to focus on diversion strategies and to close the existing landfill site and take care of any remediation that's needed on the site. And that puts us into what I call, and what our director has called, the diversion business. And so under Dwayne's leadership, he has flipped kind of our previous model of operating the landfill to operating diversion strategies. And we will be coming back to you with additional recommendations for private partnerships in order to further our diversion or emerging technology options for the landfill and for waste materials going forward. The third reason that I have become convinced that this is a good idea, because I was not convinced a few years ago that this would be a good idea, has everything to do with the sophistication of operating landfills, especially what's called modern landfills. So the technology that's involved in terms of placing liners, the equipment that's used, the monitoring for gas like methane gas, the collection of water data, air quality issues, all of the environmental concerns that come with operating a new landfill are very intensive. And we have a very small staff at the solid waste department. And although they're eminently qualified today, for example, our environmental manager has been with us for over 20 years. If he were to leave, we don't have the bench strength that comes behind that person to come in and operate those facilities. By working and partnering with a national company, they operate roughly 200 landfills across the country. So they have more than one environmental manager that can assist. They have people who operate equipment. They have purchasing contracts for the specialized equipment that's needed to operate these facilities, which, from my opinion, gives us a better deal for Larimer County residents because you get an economy of scale with a national company in terms of operating these facilities. Another thing that Dwayne did not mention is that Republic Services did offer to purchase any of the equipment that we have that we're currently using at the landfill. And so the county will get a return on our investment that we've had for the existing landfill as well. So those are the three main reasons. And I invite Dwayne if I missed something that he'd like to add.
I think, well, thank you, Lori. I think that was really well done. I think from an operational standpoint, Lori did mention operations, but having managed high wind landfills in Colorado for a number of years, some of the bigger ones in Colorado, and trying to collaborate or coordinate with the transfer station, these facilities are very robust, to say the least. They're high energy, high intense, and with the fast changing conditions, transportation requirements, compliance of the permit. And we, as a county, like Lori was talking about, we just don't have those extensive resources to maintain optimal performance of these facilities. And so I think that is probably one of the biggest factors that's really important is, when we were talking with our residents, property owners around the landfill, they stressed quite often that they were concerned with windblown litter and operations. And the county does a good job of operating. I don't want that, we do a good job, but these facilities are a lot more challenging than what we have the resources to do. And so Republic is going to have to utilize a lot of their national resources to be able to operate these facilities and do them efficiently. And we need that kind of support based on my experience. And that's why I'm recommending it. Plus, a lot of the things that Lori mentioned are pretty important too, but that's all I would have to add.
Commissioner Stevens, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just have one last question. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, do we feel like, we know that our community is concerned with diversion, and I think that that's a huge part of the discussions that we've had is really concerns about, can we meet some of these goals that we've set for our communities? Do you feel like that's possible with this model?
I do. Diversion is important to me too, and knowing that we've committed to our partners that diversion should be important to us. We had extensive conversations during the evaluation and interview process with Republic, and one of the things that I think I should share is that Republic Services is a national waste company, but they are a national waste company that is changing their model to better serve what municipalities are asking them, which is diversion. And so they're not just a waste company. I mean, they are because they do an excellent job at it, but they want to reach down and be a part of what we're trying to do. And so I think by doing this model, we, working in a partnership with Republic, they fund the capital to build these facilities, and then we can help with diversion. And, the 50% number by 2030 is an important number to us and them. And they actually helped establish that diversion goal. And so when we look at diversion, having a materials recovery facility that we can actually ship directly to the facilities, we can really start to put our focus on recycling of consumer products and businesses of cardboard and things like that. I think I've shared on some meetings in the past that when we go to the landfill, it looks like a field of cardboard up there, and it just doesn't sit well with me. And so we have to patiently work through the process to be able to get to that cardboard. but we have to have the infrastructure designed, built, and constructed, and in operations to be able to handle it. So I do think it's possible, and I think if we get these core facilities nailed down to where they're flowing and we know our volume, which is, we keep talking about volume, but in order to do any kind of diversion, we have to get our volume established, and then from our volume, we can begin to figure out our next steps in diversion. And so, you know, it's important to us. One last thing, because I think it's important. The state of CDPHE is moving forward. They are putting programs in place to eliminate organics from landfills. And that's an important task. And we also had discussions with Republic about that's coming our way. And, you know, that's a big deal when you start to say, you know, potentially they're going to ban organics from landfills. That's yard waste, that's food waste. That's a big deal, anything organic. And so what do we do with that? You know, what's the alternative? And so we're working really hard behind the scenes trying to figure out plans that would be able to meet that and try and get ahead of that curve. And we can do it better with the national, we feel like we can do it better and more efficiently with the National Waste Company that has the expertise of having already done this in California and working through, because California has been driving a lot of this. And we're able to piggyback onto a lot of that expertise, which I think is going to enhance our diversion in Larimer County. And so I think, yes, hopefully that answers your
It did,
questions,
thank you.
Commissioner.
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Kafalis, further questions, comments?
Yeah, I'll begin before we consider the motion. I have a few thoughts that I'd like to share, put some perspective into all of this. One is that, so I've lived in this community for a long time, since the 1976, and actually a number of us were involved in establishing, I think is the first recycling program in Fort Collins. It was Recycle Something, and I have fond memories of driving old international trucks that had the side go down with barrels filled with aluminum cans and glass. Back in those days, our recycling center was adjacent to where the current Northside Azatlan Community Center is. So there's definitely a bit of a history there. I remember then Governor Richard Lamb, coming up to cut the ribbon for the opening of our recycling center, and I learned that a good way to get out one's stress and perhaps frustration is to break. Back in those days, we would smash the glass bottles, although I'm sure that we took precaution, but that wasn't the safest thing, and we have our public health director here. But that brings up fond memories. And then I seem to recall in the 80s being part of discussions that were looking at doing a model similar to Loveland, you know, where Loveland has taken on the responsibility as one of their utilities for solid waste management. And there was a lot of resistance to, when the Fort Collins City Council was considering that, you know, from the commercial haulers and all of that. So I just wanted to kind of provide a little bit of that history, which, again, it's fond memories. And then, you know, in my time as a county commissioner these past 4 years, I've been directly and indirectly involved in the solid waste policy discussions. As was stated earlier, the Solid Waste Infrastructure Master Plan, the SWIMP that was, I think, adopted in 2018. The landscape has changed dramatically since that time, and that's caused us, working with our partners, to revisit, you know, what is the most cost-effective, what is the most beneficial way to look at solid waste management. And so I think it's important to point that out, that, you know, back in those days, there was primarily one main commercial hauler, and of course that's changed. And I think we need to take that into, into consideration. Just a couple of other quick points, if I may. I want to reinforce the importance from the county perspective, certainly from my perspective, about doing what we can to increase our rate of diversion. And I appreciate that we have a number to look at, 50% diversion, recycling, not going into the solid waste or into the landfill by 2030. So that's very much in line with our, as an organization, as a county organization, our sustainability goals, and that's very much in line with one of the focus areas that's included in our climate smart, future ready efforts. So I think that makes an awful lot of sense. I also want to make a quick comment on the preferred vendor, Republic Services. In my interactions with some of the staff over perhaps the past year or so, since they've gotten a bit established here in the county, maybe it's been more than a year, I feel like there's a genuine commitment to sustainability. They even have a sustainability person, and they're out in the community. So I think that's important to mention. And then finally, well, we are, this is 2023. I think we need to really move the process forward to establish a 21st century solid waste management system that is very focused on handling the material properly, safely, addressing environmental concerns, and certainly focusing on how do we continue to increase the level of recycling, reuse, rethinking that is necessary if we're to go forward in the next 50, 100 years. So that's what I wish to say, and those are my reasons for supporting the MOU when the motion comes before us, the motion to support or adopt the MOU.
Thank you.
I guess we're in deliberations now, and so I guess, did you have, Lori or Dwayne, have anything else you wanted to add, or we're just on to comments, just want to make sure. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo some of the things that Commissioner Cavallo said. Certainly the making sure that we hit our diversion goals is really important. It's important for all the communities in Larimer County. They've certainly expressed that at all the meetings that we've attended for the Planning Council. It's been really difficult to be on the Planning Council because we did shift away from a plan that we had put in place, and there were a variety of reasons that we did so, and I think they've been enumerated numerous times this morning. But I think that in looking for a potential public-private partnership, we were looking for somebody who would help us still achieve those goals. And I will be supporting this motion today because I feel like we have found that partner that we can work with. And I just also want to reassure the other municipalities that have been working with us that we will continue to listen to them, that we will continue to take information, especially from the TAC, who's been designated as the entity that will help us identify some things we want to outline in negotiations. Certainly, Wellington has some concerns about truck traffic that we've heard today. I think there's other concerns that have been expressed by other communities, but we definitely want to continue to work with our fellow communities in Larimer County. That's a really important relationship that we don't want to damage, and we want to keep hearing, their concerns. So that's really important as we move forward to establish that we are that we want to work together, and especially towards these diversion goals, and really some maybe exciting possibilities with some innovative ways to approach how to divert products that aren't as easy to divert. And I think by partnering with Republic, who does have some markets identified for some products, and who understand some of this emerging technology, I think it puts us in a good place to be able to really achieve some diversion goals. I'm really actually sad that we didn't have any public comment, honestly, today. And we heard from maybe one person via email. I thought maybe some of our partnering agencies might come this morning, or other folks in the community. I don't think it's because people aren't concerned about this issue. But it would be nice to have the public input as we make a difficult decision like this. And again, I just wanted to say that the landscape changed a lot in the past few years. So at one time, we did intend to to run and operate in the landfill, but in the environment we're in today, it doesn't seem like it's a good decision to make. So I will be supporting the motion, as I said, and look forward to the further conversations that we have about diversion and some of the other programs that we hope to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Well, first, I just want to say a few things. First, I want to thank my colleagues for serving on the Solid Waste Policy Council. There's been a lot of time and a lot of hard conversations, and I guess robust is the conversation I like to have, because there has been a lot of discussion, and certainly we value and appreciate our partnerships and their concerns. And I think when we all look at what our common goals are of diversion and working towards a zero waste kind of county and community, I know it's important for a lot of folks, and I think we all share kind of that common vision of where we'd like to go. I also want to thank Assistant County Manager Lorinda Volker, because she has been a part of this discussion long before she became County Manager, Assistant County Manager, and also Lori Kadrich, who, as you mentioned, you were here 4 years ago, and you joined on at a time when it was looking like a different direction, but you also hired the team of Dwayne Penny and Jeremy Groves and Alex Studi. I hope I had that correct. I hate butchering names, but these are really a rock star team and do amazing things. And I meant it when I drive by the landfill. I see a huge difference being a lifelong county, except for graduate school, living in northern Colorado and using the landfill myself. With construction stuff when we were doing things for our house and things, it certainly, I see the commitment to keeping that area clean. The other day, I think the little brush truck broke down the side of the road, and you're all out there trying to clean that up as fast as possible. I always worry about the traffic whizzing by you, so just know that that honking is me telling you I appreciate the work you do. But it is outstanding, the work that you do to make that landfill look as good as it does, and professional. And so I want to thank you all. And Lori for hiring these folks, and Dwayne for hiring these folks, because really we had an opening for solid waste director for a long time, because Lori was very patient and waited to get the right person in place and not just have someone. But Dwayne, thank goodness you came along. We're so grateful for your expertise and the team that you've assembled, because it helped us kind of rethink the whole plan going forward, because when I first came on as commissioner, which has been a little over 2 full years now, we were in a different place. We had a different thought process, and I was thinking, oh no, we don't want to give up control of this. We don't want life of sight. We have to be in control. And because we had those issues with the landfill that we did not build originally, that we have now assumed liability for, that has had challenges. And but we have worked diligently to be good stewards and good responsible operators of that landfill, and that's due to the team that Lori and you all have built. And it's not a, I hate to use this word, sexy thing to be in solid waste, but it is very important. As I said, everyone who lives here and in this planet has to deal with waste, and we all have different priorities and views on how to do that, but I think we all recognize we have to reduce and have diversion. And I know I'm going on, but I just want to kind of building up to what I want to say, because I started off a different spot looking at where we wanted to be. And I know we had that plan, and we had these partners, and we had this vision of this recycling center, and those were all kind of things were formed before I became a commissioner. But we all know we wanted to be a partnership, because it is a regional issue and a regional collective way to operate. And so as you have all, Dwayne, you've done a lot of education. I've asked a lot of questions. I've repeatedly asked the same questions and keep kind of pressing on. You have all been patient and very helpful to kind of help me understand kind of the bigger picture, and help me kind of come to a place today as I considered all these inputs and recommendations and the whole big package, this was probably a better course of action and pathway for the county for a lot of reasons. And so I want to thank you all for your patience for me kind of just asking the same questions over and over again sometimes. But I want to thank you for your expertise has been impressive, and helping me understand kind of overall the bigger picture is really important, because this is a legacy decision today, right? We're setting a course for our county for dealing with something that every resident has a touch point with, right? And that's the reason I asked that question, where some of those things can look different for some of these regular people that, I see them as they line up and the wind's coming, and sometimes you guys close it with the high wind and they're turning around. So I know some of this will look, as you said, easier, but not too much different. And we're doing everything possible to deal with the environmental concerns, and also how we deal with this going forward with increasing population as well in Larimer County. This is something that I think is really innovative and proactive in getting way upstream of the population that we see coming, and the amount of traffic and the environmental goals, and the things we want to do to be good stewards in the climate action plan that we have and the goals we've set. So thinking back to all that and where we're at now, certainly I had to kind of really step back and think about what is best to make this kind of once-in-a-lifetime kind of decision. This is really kind of setting us on a path that's going to impact a lot of folks. And so I knew, I have extended family that lives in the Wellington area, and we have folks that live here and there, and we have folks that loved going to the recycling center. But things are different. The markets are different. A lot of recycling that used to be recycled ends up in the landfill now. And there's the things that we'd like to see, the conditions in the markets are way different, and we don't know if they'll ever change back. I don't think we're going to contract back to those old ways. We're expanding into new ideas and markets and emerging technologies that I feel this is setting us on a pathway to be able to be ready to have some of those emerging technologies and pathways for the common goal of just diversion and trying to be a zero waste county and address some of these organic wastes and some of these things that are coming down the pipeline that I think we're well positioning the county and our partners to be ready for and be ahead of the game. And I think this is a really important step forward with that. And we have to start, as Lori said, our landfill is getting close to end of life for the site. And thank you, Jeremy. Your technology and your hard work has gained us some more airspace and time, and that's due to your phenomenal operations. So thank you for that. I think our partner said it wasn't about who was the partner, just kind of that concern about having a private partnership, a P3, they call them public-private partnership. But I want to emphasize it's still a public partnership. This is still public partnership that we will have some control over the rates. We're working with the partner, but now we have a partner who's willing to put skin in the game and to match us on our goals. I go back to this on the back of the MOU stating about the 50% diversion goal by 2030. That's big, and they're committed to that as much as we are. The idea that they're going to take our employees on as the same tenure and to value them as we do, and the return on investment of our equipment, seems like this is a partner who matches our values as a county. We have these guiding principles, and I was just sitting here thinking about how many of this MOU and this partnership matches those guiding principles. And I won't go into all 6 of them, but I named off 4 on my head. So I feel like this is in alignment with how we are at a county, cultivating partnerships, being innovative, and just on and on. So I feel really good about this. I'm glad we had this discussion today. I'm glad that we went back and got information from our policy council and the technical advisory council. And again, I thank my colleagues for their service. I know that wasn't a fun conversation, but I do value that they sat and listened to the concerns and brought those concerns back. And I'm want to thank the town of Wellington and their representatives for being very specific about what that was important for them to be in that contract and some concerns they have. And I want to thank them for voicing those concerns because we want to be good partners. And I do think this MOU is setting us up for a really great partnership going forward. I'm really grateful for Republic submitting the RFP. I think they are out in the community. I think they really strive to be good partners and be community members. And I've seen them out and about, and I'm really thankful that they're willing to work with us to reach some of these goals. It's a really important partnership. So with that, like Dwayne said, we could sit and talk solid waste, and we could talk environmental things and our climate plan and how this really matches up with a lot of goals that we have as Board of County Commissioners and as a county. But there's been a lot of work. This isn't something that we have just recently started talking about. This is years of work coming to today to this decision. And after listening to all the great points, Lori, thank you for really explaining why this is a better probably course of action for the county. I think you spelling that out, and Dwayne as well, the highlights, I think it was really important to hear those again today and really think about that thoroughly. And so I will be supporting this motion today. And again, I commend you all for the excellent work. And thank you, colleagues, for letting me kind of talk through that, as well as I appreciate your comments as well. And it's been great to hear from you about things that the conversations you're having at the Solid Council, Policy Council. And I want to, and I appreciate Commissioner Stevens mentioning that we'll be continuing to listen to our partners because we consider them important, valued partners. And so we're going to be continuing to develop this as we go forward. So with that, thank you all for listening to me kind of go on. But like I said, I was thinking about this decision. This is something setting us on a course that is kind of a pretty big course for a long time. And I appreciate all the conversations and feedback today. So colleagues, any other things you'd like to add? And then I was going to ask Lorinda if there's anything you'd like to add to this conversation.
I don't. I think staff did a great job outlining the issues and the reasons for this recommendation.
Thank you. Lori and Dwayne, anything else you'd like to add? Okay. So I will turn to my colleague, now that our deliberation is over, Commissioner Stevens, to make that motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to direct staff to sign the memorandum of understanding to enter into contract negotiations with Republic Services to design, build, construct, fund, and operate the North Landfill, Central Transfer Station, and Material Recoveries Facility Recycling Center within the framework of the memorandum of understanding received from Republic Services.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens, for that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Well, wonderful. Onward and upward, as we say. Thank you all for being here. And again, thank you, staff, for a great presentation. Job well done. And thank you to the other members of the audience that are here today. Thank you for your presence. We appreciate you being here. Okay, we will move on to our agenda. And now it's time for our county manager update.
I guess this is my chance to say thank you to the commissioners and most especially to Lori Cadridge. I was off last week dealing with some family issues, and Lori held the fort, and I think everything went well. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lorinda. It's great to have you back, and thank you, Lori. You had a busy week last week, so we'll move on to Commissioner activity reports. We'll start with Commissioner Kafalis.
Thank you. We've already mentioned this, but I think it's okay to mention it again. But last Monday, of course, was the celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday, and there was a march in Fort Collins. All of us participated, and that was a good thing to do. On Wednesday, the 18th, there were two meetings that I wish to bring to people's attention. Well, both Commissioner Stevens and I, Kristen, participated in the Veterans Together meeting. It was a virtual meeting, and I think that was good that we did that. And there were mostly folks from the Veterans Administration, folks from staff from our Veterans Service Office, and so there was good discussion. And I think they really have an interest in building relationships with the county as an organization and with the commissioners. In the morning that day, I met with the Conservation finance program manager or director for the Trust for Public Lands. And he was interested in talking about our climate smart and our sustainability work and our conservation work, open space. I think they help with ballot measures. They were involved with the successful 2020, I think it was referendum 2A in Denver regarding climate, resources for addressing climate change. And I think they're working with the Larimer Conservation District here that is considering a mill levy to help some of their conservation work. On Thursday, I participated on behalf of the ARC of Larimer County. They're looking to update their strategic plan, and they identified key stakeholders. And so there was a stakeholder interview with a local consulting company, and hopefully I provided some meaningful feedback and to help them move forward with their strategic plan. Also on that Thursday, I participated along with Heidi Pruis and a couple of other staff members with the Community Foundation, their community indicator stakeholder, their final meeting. They'll be producing a report, and there was a lot of emphasis on housing and things of that nature. That evening, we had our Board of Health meeting. One of the topics was the proclamation regarding radon awareness, but also looked at approving the environmental health fee schedule. That was approved, and there was a discussion about the 2023 work plan for the county health and environment. On Friday, I participated at the High Country Beverage Facility in Johnstown, the Fort Collins Area Chamber of Commerce, and a couple of other partners, Community Foundation, and a group called Colorado Colorado Succeeds. They presented a report, Education Pathways to Employment, and I actually have 2 additional hard copies for you folks if you're interested. But that was a good discussion, a lot of turnout and enthusiasm. And I guess finally on Friday there, I think all of us participated one way or the other in the Colorado Counties Inc. Legislative meeting. No, there were no votes, but some of those, it was kind of a precursor to the meeting on Friday, this Friday, where there will be the various steering committees will vote on legislation that impacts counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kafalis, and yes, I would be interested in that hard copy. Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things I wanted to highlight. On Tuesday, we had the Community Corrections Board meeting. We had a pretty intensive program from someone from the Drug Task Force on the opioid epidemic in the county, and that was very informative. So thank you to Madam Chair for her service on the board that's working to get funds out into the community for the opioid crisis. On Wednesday morning, I was able to do some trivia with some of our new employees at the new employee orientation, and it's always fun to meet the new folks who are joining us at the county. Then on Thursday, had a meeting, North Front Range MPO finance meeting, which was pretty straightforward. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. I will go back just to Tuesday, January 17th. I had attended the virtual behavioral health secure transportation statewide meeting, and I know we had some staff there, but there's just a lot of conversations. I know we have our what we need to have in place, but now they're talking about how they will gather data and find out across the state who's doing what and how and where the gaps are. The conversations are continuing, and I think Lori Stoll will be a great resource there to help us understand exactly where we need to be in that space. But I wanted to, I think that was recorded if you want to go back and listen. I also met with the new representative from House District 51, briefly, virtually, from his time down in Denver. He asked just about some priorities for our county and areas, and it was a brief meeting, but I appreciate him reaching out. On the 18th, I had I had a lot of meetings, but we had the our CCAT standing policy meeting, but before that, I had the Regional Opioid Abatement Council meeting. We voted on approving, there's 3 buckets that we're using. A fourth one is, well, actually 4 buckets, but there are 2 of the operations or grant contracts we discussed and approved. And then there are 2 more coming up at the next meeting. We have a template that we developed as a Regional Opioid Abatement Council so we can have metrics and have reporting. So there'll be a mid-year report and then approval at that mid-year report for the rest of the funding to be released. And so we've kind of got that system in place after starting less than a year ago from basically nothing, not having a structure or board or bylaws or anything, to be where we're actually handing out grants and contracts is pretty, when I think about it, like, wow, how did we get here? But it's been a lot of work, and I want to thank our Public Health Director, Tom Gonzalez, is chairing that, and I'm Vice Chair, and our council's been almost 100%, not quite, but everyone's there, and we're working really hard, and all their community advisory folks have been invaluable. And this was this past meeting was our first time that our 3 folks with lived experience have attended the meeting, and one is more of a family kind of impacted, and then one is a long-term lived experience with addiction, and one is a more short-term. And they were very active in their engagement and asked a lot of great questions, and I want to thank them for their service because it is sharing some sensitive things about their lives, but it was really impactful, and I want to thank them for their time. I'm glad that my colleagues attended that virtual meeting. I actually was still driving back home. That was with the snowy day, and it actually ended up being a little more slicker than I thought. So by the time I got home, it was not, I would probably just been at the end of the meeting, so I will be probably attending the next one. These snowstorms have been great to have the moisture, but they certainly make commuting a little bit challenging at times. I had my Estes Park conversation on Thursday. We met at the wonderful Kind Coffee. If you haven't been there, they roast their own beans and things like that, and it's a community space. And I mostly focused on aging services and behavioral health, and I didn't expect them to have such a big intersection, but I had a lot of caregivers show up, a lot of folks that use the senior center up there, and they spoke about their struggle, especially being up in a mountain town in the snow and the isolation and being a caregiver. And I'm glad we were there because some folks spoke of their struggle. And so we're going to look at how we can talk to both Office on Aging and Behavioral Health and see what we can do to bring some more resources up there, especially for the caregivers that are trying to age in place and find it sometimes hard to get a break and find some resources. And I want to thank everyone that came because we had a really great discussion. I also attended quickly with some of the representatives from state senators regarding a bill that I'll be testifying on this week, Senate Bill 5, which is a workforce development for fire mitigation crews for forestry, which would have a great impact here in our county because it will kind of help bring some more funding and some resources to a great program at the Front Range Community College. And there's a lot in that bill. You can go and look on Senate Bill 5, and a lot of this comes from my work with the Forest Health Council as I chair the legislative committee, and this was a unanimous consensus and agreement from the council and our legislative committee for this priority. And then I had a great meeting with Mayor Koenig last week. We had a lot of great conversations. We just thought we'd catch up. We haven't had a chance just to catch up, her and I. I try to meet with the mayors at least once a quarter and have a good conversation, and I appreciate her candor and her engagement, and there's a lot that we overlap working with residents up there in that area, part of the county. And then it was my Estes Day, so I went to the Estes Valley Planning Advisory Committee. That's virtual, and we have a new chair of that board and a new vice chair, and I believe it is, I'll have to go back. I think it's Rex, but there's a new chair and vice chair and some changes with leadership there. And we'll be looking. We have some terms coming up at the end of this in the summer, so we'll be looking at recruiting for that. They had a lot of conversations about short-term rental regulations, and it was a great presentation. And they had some really thoughtful things to say, and so I appreciate their hard work. They put a lot of time reading in and responding to folks with emails. So thank you for your service. And then I attended the Overland Bike Celebration in Fort Collins. They wanted to thank a lot of partners for their partnership. They really, I want to shout out to Joel with our Department of Natural Resources, he does a lot of our trail maintenance and planning, and Overland gave out a big, huge shout out to him and saying how amazing he was. And I want to agree with them 1,000%. Part Natural Resources and Joel and them partnered with Overland and Volunteers Outdoors Colorado, and my colleagues joined us as we built that new piece of the Nomad Trail or connection there and around Soderberg and Horsetooth Mountain. And this is part of that planning. And so they were really celebrating being able to be a partner and celebrating of the partnership with us and the people that volunteered. They get a lot of awards for people that come and help do patrols, they call them, which is basically people riding around the trails in case someone gets a flat or is along the side or needs help fixing their bike or a flat. And great partnerships, great conversations, and a lot of hope for the future. And they do a lot of volunteer work and giving back, and they also do a lot of work in Laurie State Park. And they're looking at some other areas throughout the county on Forest Service land, some other partnerships. You can go and find out more on their website about the programs that they're involved with. And I think for the invitation and the conversations, I met with a lot of new folks. And then on Friday, it was a pretty busy day. We had our NOCO Places 2050 partners meeting. There a lot happened. That was a meeting where I just sat and absorbed. There was so much data. You can go to the NOCO Places 2050 website. There is a new Codex Colorado, and I don't know what that acronym is, but because we've said Codex so many times, but they're trying to bring from the Wyoming border through Larimer County all the way down to Jefferson County, kind of along the Continental Divide, and a little bit of some with all these counties and federal and state partners as we bring all this data and make these maps, and very impressive maps about where is the sensitive areas in our community and where some of this, how we can manage the heavy, high flow of visitors who frequent these areas, and having this data to help us inform and having common messaging and common help kind of support management practices and being consistent with that messaging, like leave no trace and parking where you should and things like that. Larimer County has done a couple of surveys looking at species and wildlife habitats, and there's a lot of great data. Some counties have less data, but the maps are pretty impressive. So go on to NOCO Places 2050. But we have a lot of areas, especially up our Big Thompson and Poudre Canyons, and actually right around Red Mountain and Soapstone and those areas that we've already conserved. They show some of the areas that are conserved, but also kind of that wintering areas and birthing areas and where the wildlife are. And it's very impressive. And it's certainly something I'm going to be using as a tool to kind of look for when we're making decisions based on water and air quality and wildlife. It's very important to look at that. And then I did also attend the CCI legislative briefing, that a lot of great conversations there. We're off to a rolling start for our legislative session and lots to keep up with, as we all know. And then I attended the Poudre School District Day of the Youth yesterday meeting with a lot of staff members. There was probably over 100 people in the room. Some pretty hard data to digest about the state of our youth and some of the numbers from the Healthy Kids Colorado survey and also some of the Connection survey from the Poudre School District, and really highlighting some areas that we need to target. So there's going to be another meeting next Monday where we actually look for action steps. And so we're not just talking about the issues, but actually taking some action steps. And then I think that's all I'll use for today. It was a busy week. Surprised that we're already almost through January. And so with that, that's the end of our reports. We will now look to move into our executive session. And so I will ask Commissioner Kafalis to make that motion to move us into executive session, please.
Thank you. I move the Board of Commissioners move into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402 4B, conferences with an attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding potential amendments to the Loveland Urban Renewal Authority plan and appointment of a Larimer County representative to the Loveland Urban Renewal Authority Board.
Thank you, Commissioner Kafalis, for that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will be coming back on the air because we will be making a decision from this executive session. So we'll be off the air for a little while we have this executive session, but we will return to make that motion and announce the decision. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We've been in executive session for a discussion regarding the Loveland Urban Renewal Authority Plan appointment for a Larimer County representative. I'm going to turn this over to our county attorney, William Rousseau.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill Rousseau with the Larimer County Attorney's Office. So I'm here today to ask the board to take action with respect to a request from the Loveland Urban Renewal Authority. On January 13th, they sent a letter to the county to inform you that they are expanding the membership on their board. And as such, the county gets a designee. They get a seat on that board. And so I'm here today to ask the commissioners to make that appointment. I prepared a resolution that identifies the appointment that could be then forwarded on to Loveland Urban Renewal Authority after the board takes action.
Thank you, Bill, for that condensed version of what we are meeting about with today. Colleagues, any further questions or comments? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to our motion. Commissioner Gonzalez, would you make that motion, please?
Yes, I move to approve a resolution appointing Commissioner Jody Chaddock McNally as the Larimer County representative on the Loveland Urban Renewal Authority Board.
Thank you for that motion, Commissioner Gonzalez. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. That concludes our business today. For our administrative matters meeting, it is 11:44. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.